This is bragging about operating right here in the United States and saying more and bigger is to come. Now, the terror network claiming responsibility for the shooting attack in Texas, but the White House being slow to call this a terrorist attack. What does the Obama administration need to do to make sure another attack does not happen in America? Senator and Presidential candidate Rand Paul joins us. Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
First of all, would you call this terrorism, what happened in Texas?
Absolutely, it's terrorism. And I think it's an example of how we do need to secure our border. I'm not sure where they came from, but we do need to secure our southern border. We still need to secure our southern border. The other thing I would say, though, is we also need to secure who visits us in this country. And apparently one of them had already been investigated over time. Maybe those who have been investigated need to be followed a little more closely.
But I mean, the internet doesn't see borders. I mean, if you've got ISIS sort of calling the shots from abroad and directing people in the United States, I mean, hypothetically, I don't know. I mean, they're bragging about it. I don't know if they actually did that. Is it, how do we protect ourselves from that? If you've got sort of a receptive group of people here who, for whatever reason, want to be jihadists, and you've got ISIS overseas calling the shots and encouraging them.
I think we're never fully protected, but I think we need to do everything we can to stop threats to us. And this is one of the things that gets kind of confused with my position. I don't want bulk collection of all of our data, and I don't want the government looking at everything, but I'm more than willing to have the government selectively look at the data using the Constitution, using probable cause. The one gentleman that had already been implicated in this, same as the Susteren boy, the boy in the Boston bomber, is that we already had some information. I think we had enough to ask a judge for permission to look at records, both in this case and in the Boston bombing case. I don't think we're actually using the constitutional tools that we have in an appropriate fashion.
Do you fear ISIS is really going to come through on this big threat? They say, I mean, I don't know if it's some crazy threat they're just doing to create panic with us, but do you suspect that they do have inroads in the U.S.?
I think that radical Islam does, and it disturbs me that there are still some nation states that are supporting it. I think that Saudi Arabia often finances radical Islam and the teaching of hatred to the West and hatred of Americans. And so I think that it is important that we know that. It's important that we know that there is a threat within and a threat without. I just think we can stop it with more aggressive use of actual constitutional tools.
All right, I'm going to turn now to some polls. NBC News, Wall Street Journal, this one you might like, is that general election preferences among registered voters. You are, by one tick up, the best in the GOP group to take on Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What do you think about that?
Well, we obviously like that poll.
I figured you'd like that one.
But the interesting thing is that's a Wall Street Journal poll, and it shows us being the Republican that is most likely to beat Hillary Clinton nationally. But there's also been 3 or 4 polls in the last 2 weeks saying the same thing in individual states. So Colorado is a battleground state. We are the only Republican that beats Hillary Clinton in Colorado. Same in Iowa, same in Pennsylvania. Difficult to win states, and I think it's because we have a different message. In this poll, we were ahead among independents by 8 points over Hillary Clinton. That's how you win elections, and we think it's very important for Republicans at large to know that.
All right, one quick question on Baltimore. Would you do it differently, handle it differently than President Obama, who's been basically, I think, a little bit hands-off on this one?
I would have handled it differently than the mayor of Baltimore, that's for sure. I think it's a mistake to sort of say, hey, guys, you can pillage the city for a while and we'll let that go, and that we're going to be sort of standing back. But I think it's also important to know sort of some of the underlying causes of why there's unease in our country. And one of the stories I've been talking about is a young man in New York named Khalif Browder, who went to prison for 3 years in Rikers, never had a trial. The guy who accused him of the crime was here in the country illegally. He tried to commit suicide because of that. That's part of the unease in our country. None of it excuses violence, but there is an unease in our big cities, and we need to be aware of it.
Senator, nice to see you, sir.
Thank you.
And straight ahead, the war. It has started. Hillary